Spiderman, Thor, St. Maximillian Kolbe, and our blessed mother. You ready for this? Y'all are looking at me really strange right now. Thanks, Robert, for that. As all the returning students know, for all of you new students, I tend to be a bit of a fan of Marvel, DC, of comics. Fun movies, great works. I love the stories that they tell. I love the realistic understanding of them. That yes, as we look at literature, and as you look at it in various things, you have the hero archetype of literature. These larger-than-life characters who do these things that are just truly inhuman. But the beautiful things about these stories, and especially about the superheroes that we see, is this understanding of they're real persons first. That's why, especially like in Spider-Man Homecoming, I love that image of Peter Parker. I love the way that characters played out through the Avengers movies. I'm not going to say anything about Infinity Wars, just in case somebody hasn't seen it. But I love that reality that Peter Parker shows. Because he shows a person that doesn't have it all together. That doesn't have it all right. He shows this person who still can do pretty incredible things, and yet still becomes afraid. Very afraid at times. As you see in the Avengers movies that he's in, he clings very closely to Tony Stark. Because Tony Stark, Iron Man, is somebody who knows what it means, who has it together. And I love how Peter Parker sees something attractive within him. He sees within that character, that persona, that there's something lacking that I need. He has something that I desire. He has something that I don't have that I know I need. And he strives for it. And then we look at the character of Thor, especially in Thor Ragnarok, which is a hysterical movie, by the way. This man who has it all, who's literally in the comics a god, a Norse god, who controls lightning. And he becomes this close to completely giving it all and despairing forever. Seemingly unable to be, seemingly unable to do what others are telling him he can do. Seemingly unable to reach the heights that others know he can live up to. And he almost throws it all away. He gives it all. He almost throws it out the window. But he doesn't. Because that's the challenge of hope. As we see in Tony Stark and Peter Parker, Thor. We see in our own lives, in our own moments, that there's the challenge of hope. And today especially, that's what we celebrate and we remember. That for those who still have no idea what we're talking about today, the Assumption of our Blessed Mother basically means that Mary from Nazareth, who became the mother of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, right moments before her death, was assumed, taken to heaven, body and soul. Ask your theology teachers about it today. I'm sure they'll love to talk to you about that. Seriously. But it means that an ordinary person, a boring person from, as we look at history, a crossroads town. Nothing important ever happened in Ghana at all. A know-nothing person of a know-nothing town becomes a central figure in history. Becomes a central figure of faith because of a moment of hope and of faith. Yesterday we celebrated the feast of St. Maximillian Kolbe. I don't know if you know his story or not, but basically he was a priest in Poland, arrested during World War II for being a priest. Sent to Auschwitz, one of the worst of the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, and killed. Killed because he never stopped being a priest. One of his last words, to give hope to those who were around him, and that's the testimony that they gave. That after they were freed, those who knew or saw the example of Saint Maximilian, they said he gave hope where there was none. He gave them hope in such a dark time. My brothers and sisters, that's what today becomes for us. That's the challenge that today gives for us, that as we begin this academic year, as we begin this time of studies, this time which is going to get very boring for some of us, whatever. It's the challenge of hope. The challenge to realize that when you get angry at your teachers, when you get upset, when you don't know what they're trying to teach you, when you think you know more than they do, when you think you could be teaching the class, what are we challenged to do for the next step? How are we challenged to live that next step? Because our Blessed Mother shows us today that no matter how good we get, we still fall short. No matter how good we get, there is something that is even greater that we can hit. Oftentimes we get to the point where we hit that wall and we have no idea what to do next. Where we hit that wall where we think we can't do it. It's impossible to do. My brothers and sisters, today gives us that beautiful understanding. It is very possible. How do we know ourselves for that? Do we know ourselves well enough to know that we can? Do we know ourselves well enough to know where we need help? How we challenge each other, how we push each other. All while understanding and working with each other as one family, as one body of Christ, to be able to drive each other together to that glory that we celebrate for our Blessed Mother today. To that understanding that we too, despite all of our faults and all of our failings, despite how sinful we are, how much we fall short, that we too can achieve that profound glory of heaven, because that alone is what we're called to. That and that alone is what we're called to strive for.